Rahmane here. Who else? Morning.
Good Kai's here too.
Oh, bless you. Rahmane, I heard you tuning in there.
The little odd such.
Yeah.
Odd such. They such.
Yeah.
Circling the wagons.
Good. Welcome. And welcome to Guru Prem. And who else is there?
Guru
Sadnam. And who else?
Hargoben.
Hi, Hargoben. You know what I found out?
What's
that? We do have the recording from last week. It's kind of low volume, but we have it.
Oh, that's great.
Excellent. Yeah, so I'll get it up there.
All
hopefully sometime today.
Good news.
I'll get the both up. But thanks for letting me know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Who else is here?
Ranjit.
Say it again. Oh, Ranjit?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Ranjit.
Hi.
And who else?
Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. Welcome.
Hi.
And who else?
Carol.
Hi, Carol. Welcome. Are the flowers blooming in Juneau?
Yes, they are.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And who else is here? Anybody else? Is Sadnakar here? Wait a minute. Somebody said something. Was that Onkar?
Nope, it was Haridas Kaur.
Hi, Haridas. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And who else? Okay. Well, maybe we're going to have a small class today. So I'm going to tell you about next week. I'm on my way back to New Mexico, and I realized that next Wednesday morning I expect to be in Sedona. So I usually make sure that I am only at a place where I'm positive about what kind of phone reception I'm going to get. But we're just going to try it next week to see if we can do it on my cell phone. So I'm just sort of forewarning everybody. So, God bless you all.
So, Siri Gian?
Yes.
If you don't have reception tomorrow, do you want us to tune in together and do a kind of group Baba Siri Chand visit, or do you want us to drive until, say, 10:15 and then close our circle?
Yeah, just try until about 10:15 and then close the circle. And
okay,
you can do any kind of meditation that you like. You want to be in charge?
Sure.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I'm banking on it. I'm going to do what I can to make sure it works, but that's a good alternative plan.
Okay.
And also for any other time that I don't seem to show up. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's tune in. Begin long, deep breathing. Straight spine. Eyes to the brow point. Good, and relax. Relax into your breath. And inhale to begin. Long deep breath. That long deep breath. Oh, what a pleasure. What a pleasure. Long deep breath. Beautiful, clear spring breeze. Good. And now please begin heart breath. That is long, deep breathing from the belly through the nose. But on the exhale, feel as though the breath is coming out of your heart center. Good. And now please send in this beautiful heart breath. Acknowledge that it's a beautiful heart breath from your own heart to everybody else's heart who is on this call or who is listening to it on the recording. Good. Keep up. And now, please just send your beautiful heart breath to that very shaky peace process in Syria. They need it. They need it. And then, of course, to anybody else that you would like to include. Okay, so inhale and exhale. And breathe. You can continue to do heart breath if you like. Yes, do it all the time, day and night. Okay, so Baba Siri Chand is saying, what a blessing to be you. He says, he's going back to that council table again. Remember the council table that we joined what we would call the great masters? He says, please join us at that table. And he says, understand that now it is you who are in the human bodies. You who are, he calls it locked into this time and space syndrome. The way he talks about it, it doesn't sound like this hard and fast reality that we perceive, but when he talks about it, it sort of seems to be like an altered reality for him. He says, but I freely go in and out. There's no problem there. What he's saying is that you are this great being, that you are this great and wise being who has taken on this time of forgetfulness to live in this time and space he calls it in this very beautiful ecological body and mind. He says, I know you all get so upset with it. Why can't I be in heaven? Why can't I realize my sainthood now? He says, but you have to understand. He says, you were playing this very rare game called the human life. He says, to have this human life, you need to have this human body. He says, because if you could just see the energy tendrils, you would understand that this body, this mind, are so connected with all the universal. He said it's so connected, it would be a good idea if you would simply bow to your own body, to your own mind, bow to the being of you, and bow to your commitment of coming into the human body and mind. Okay, he says, do that now. Bow to your own body and mind. He says, you know, this is a partnership. He says, between your own impeccable soul and your very proud and beautiful body and mind. He says, it doesn't matter what condition of health or illness you're in. He says, what's important is that you are in this body. He says, you are not halfway in between. He says, if you were in a coma, perhaps you would be in between. But he says, as long as you are conscious, you are fully present. So you can only revere that. Because whatever the condition of your being is a condition that is a condition in which you can use this very blessed being to serve the universal. You understand? He says, now let's take you back a few years. Well, actually, he's talking about lifetimes. He says, let's take you back to the beginning. He says, before you were even Stone Age cave people. He says there was a time when you were in peril. He says that peril originated because you had taken the gigantic leap for this incredible, beautiful wisdom, Godhead wisdom, to move into the time of forgetfulness. He says to move through that, he says it is as though moving through a curtain which separates you, moves you into being. Moves you into the being, he says, he calls it of the protocol type. He says that protocol type, of course, is through what Yogi Bhajan always called the 8.4 million lifetimes, half in water. He says, you have reached the human state. Oh, my God. He says, you are so close to returning. He says, so this is the time to be absolutely grateful for what you have gone through. He says, of course, you have been through lots of pain. He says, you have developed tremendous courage, tremendous understanding and willpower, and so on through so many lifetimes. He says, but now you have the courage to stand here before your own body, before your own mind. He says, and surrender your mistrust. Surrender your mistrust into what the next step is. Surrender your body and mind into the full totality of living in consciousness. He says, this is the step that you are in. He says he wants you to take just a minute of doing heart breath to feel that, to know that, to understand that of who you are. He says, through this body-mind system, you experience every emotion. He says to do that, to experience every emotion, he says you must be in what he calls a cutoff state. In other words, when you are fully united, you don't feel the anger, the terror, the worry. You don't feel the joy, the surprise. He says the joy of union is a little bit different than human joy. So you don't feel the surprise. He says that's because you live in beauty. You live in the absolute of the beauty. You live in the absolute of the kindness. You live in the absolute of the love. So he's telling me to tell you about what happened this week. I'm doing healing sessions out here, and I get people in touch with their souls. And there's one lady that all of them are delightful, but this one, she really has an incredible connection with her soul. So I finally asked Soul, why in the world did you take a human body? And let me tell you the answer. She said, soul comes into existences so that in the final round, that final union of what we would call everyday self or the body and mind, the final union of the separated consciousness with the whole is so incredible. It is so great. It is so extraordinary that the soul pines for it. And because of that, the soul takes on all of these births, deaths, rebirths, so that it can finally come to this final moment of reunion. I said, well, what about all the pain in between? And she goes, oh, no, that's not important. She said, it is the experience of the finite with the union with the infinite that is so incredibly joyous, huge, extraordinary, that the soul jumps into these lifetimes. And not only that, after the union, it will jump back in the pool again. Imagine that, just so it can have all the experience. He says, do you see what a privilege all of this experience is? He says the soul just wants to experience all of that. Experience the highs, experience the lows, experience the dance, experience the terror. He says, haven't you been doing all that? He says, again, as Yogi Bhajan says, you are not a human trying to have a spiritual experience. You are spirit having a human experience. He says, so go for it. Go for this human experience. It takes you in the highs, takes you in the lows. He's not telling you, of course, to go out and become an addict or something of that sort. No. What he's saying is that when you do meet the terrors, when you do meet the hardships, he says, please don't try to block them. He says, please use your breath, your beautiful heart breath. He says to allow that experience to flow through you. To do that, he says, you allow your vessel, he calls it your vessel, to become a neutral conduit in which you would fully experience, for instance, heartbreak, loss, grief. You let yourself experience it. He says, now, be very aware, this doesn't mean getting stuck in it. What it does mean is through the neutrality, you let it flow through you until it's had its say, until it's had its peace. And then you come out of it naturally. Then he says there are oftentimes layers, he says, so you may experience it again. And then you allow it to move through you. He says, but be sure to give it up to soul. Allow soul your whole self as a unit, as a unified being to have this experience. He says, and that is how you move on. You move on to the next awareness. You move on to the next level. That is how you clear yourself. He says, please don't get stuck. He says, if you find yourself just, for instance, having the same thoughts year after year, like, oh, nobody loves me, oh, I can't make that connection, oh, I can't live my destiny. He says, pinpoint that as getting stuck. He says, you don't have to be stuck. He says, give that recurring voice to soul. He says, again, go into the vessel of neutrality and allow soul to have that. He says, allow soul to eat that. In other words, let soul eat it and digest it so that your whole being can move along this very blessed track that soul is set up for it. He says, this is the course of surrendering. He says, I know you always hear those little expressions, let go, let God, surrender. He says, this is it. This is it. You are surrendering. Surrendering can happen in an instant. Surrendering may take some amount of time, but it is surrendering. It is giving up. It is giving up so that you can move into the next area of bliss or discontent, he calls it. He says it doesn't matter. When you're dealing from your neutral vessel, it does not matter. He says as you go through these processes, you would be so surprised to find out what you were developing. He says it's rather like building a skyscraper. He says first you have to build the foundation, make the great hole in the ground. Well, he says you leave the planning up to us, he says. But then it's for you to make the big foundation and then to allow the structure to be built within you. And the structure to be built within you happens as you have the experience of healing, as you have the experience of transformation. So he says, so do you see why it is important for you to have pain, to have been a victim, to have been a creep, and then to heal it, to allow the surrender, to allow the transformation. He says, that is where your structure comes from. He says, please revere it. Have reverence. Have reverence for yourself, what you have done over and over again, what you continue to do, and what you will do in the future. He says what you call in the future, but for us is called the eternal present. Breathe, please. Good. And he says, please understand that this eternal heart is such a gift, is such a gift to each one. He says it feels as though it is only your heart, your own private heart. And he says in many senses it is your own private heart. But he says, oh, my dears, it is so much bigger than that. He says, here you will find the exquisite union. Here you will find the exquisite union of heaven and earth. He says you could rack your brains for centuries and never find it. He said, but all you have to do to find it is to allow yourself to melt into your own heart. Just melt into your own heart. Do that now, please. And he says, if you have little buggy voices that say, oh, I am nothing, why am I going here? He says, surrender. Surrender. He says, I'm telling you that that's only a self-judgment. He says it is not the judgment of your soul. Keep up the breath. He says your soul has no judgment. Your soul only has love for you. Let me repeat that. He says your soul has no judgment. It only has love for you. Feel that love now. There may be a part of you that says, but soul, why did you desert me? Why am I in this pain? Why is that happening? And so on and so forth. Why are my dreams not being realized? He says, take that to soul. Place it on the altar of soul. Let it be soul's problem, not yours. Keep up the breath. Let go, let God. Be in that neutrality of time and space that allows the eternal present. That's where soul lives. That's what this girl is calling the Aquarian dimension. Be there. Remember, be here now. This is it. Allow the transformations to take place. Now, know who you are. Now, know who you are. Know who you are. Allow it now. He says, what a grand presence you are. Oh, my dear, what a grand presence you are. He says, allow yourself to feel it. He says, you are neither above nor below, but your presence is grand. He says, don't you feel it? Don't you know it? He says, this is the presence of the world community. In this presence, he says, you are not alone. He says, you know the presence of your own soul. That is absolute expansion and connection to all. In this category, he says, now please feel out. For instance, we're going to call it, he's calling it the Assyrian problem. The Syrian problem. Feel out. That is, stay in your neutrality. Stay in your neutrality. He says, and allow the feeling of their dictator. He calls it their hate boss. Allow that feeling, that very real consciousness and presence also to melt in your own heart, which is unfathomable. That is enormous. He says, let that dictatorship, that hurt and hate, he says, let it melt in your own heart. In this presence of who you are, let it melt. Good. Use your breath. Good. And feel what happens. Take note of what happens when you do that. Good. Now, he says this is how you become the victor. You know that word, that Sikh word, fateh? This is it. All is victorious. All is victorious. When you surrender it in this true God presence of who you are. Do you see how the God presence, we'll call it, the soul, the totally expansive, the Aquarian dimension, is totally interacting with what you would call the human or the earth dimension, the time and space dimension? Do you see the interaction? Do you feel the interaction? He says, this is the truth of it, my dears. You have become conscious enough to understand this, to experience this. He says, oh, be so grateful. He says, isn't this the most fun? Yes. He says, okay, now please be sure that you are also again melted in your own heart into the presence of soul. Use your breath. Good. And now take someone or some event that is precious to you, but that is having difficulties, that seems separated, that feels hurt, or someone who has maybe called you names, or has been short with you, or has done you an injustice. And allow any or all of that again to reside in this expansiveness of your incredible infinite heart. Let it happen. Keep up your breath. Having no expectations. Just allow that merger, that moving into the mist, so to speak, or moving into the sunlight, into the clarity, however you experience it. He says, understand this business of who you are. Oh, my dears, can you truly believe this? As you truly believe this is what it means in your vernacular to believe in God, to have faith in God, to trust God. Do you understand that? You have reached the point finally to understand that the God is within. So please, in your kindness, in your wholeness, acknowledge that. Acknowledge what's going on here. Acknowledge the effect of your consciousness being in that totality of space, that expansion, that gentle breeze of space that has all potential. Please acknowledge the power, the kindness, the healing, the solace that it provides to the total human collective. Understand that. Be at peace with that. Trust it. Realize it. You talk about self-realization. He says, oh, my dears, this is self-realization. Heart to heart. He says, boogie to boogie. He says, dance with the whole business. He says, don't get morose. He says, don't get holier than thou. He says, allow it to happen and be fully present with it. Enjoy it, dance with it, laugh with it, cry with it. Be who you are fully. This is your soul having your human experience. He says, so have a good time. He says, my goodness, what a TV show you're putting on for soul. He says, you're the best. So now continue the breath and allow this consciousness, this awareness to settle in every bit of your being, every bit of your consciousness, your awareness, your mind. Let it settle. Let it be activated more and more. Let it open. Good. And also let it be sourced anchored in every cell of your body. Every 10 trillion cells of your body. Good. Know who you are now. This blessed presence. Living in mind and body. As mind and body. He says, love you. He says, so love yourselves, love each other. This is not trivial, he says. This is everything. He says, okay, God bless you. He says, how are you going to do that? God bless you. Allow the God of you to bless the whole of you. Good. And inhale. And exhale. Good. He says, and now, my dears, it's time to share. Share this blessed experience of who you are. Are we having fun, he says? Okay. So who can share? Who can share their experience?
Well, when we brought our
situation,
a person, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
When you asked us to bring in our, person that needed help or whatever we had conflict with, I brought in my daughter, and she's still resistant. She's been resistant since she was born, but I did feel that it was starting to be like a melting of her fears, and then we went out of that and went into something. Went into the expansion of the experiencing God essence. So how were we to end that? How was that to be? And usually there's a way of going into something and coming out of it clearly with a person or a situation.
No, just allow it to continue.
Yeah, it's still continuing, so just let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Good. Good. Well, thank you so much, dear. Anybody else would like to share? No. Let's go beyond would like to share. Who can share?
This is Carol. I can share.
Who is this?
Carol.
Oh, yes, Carol. Please share.
Well, see, when we were asked to think of a situation or a person where we were having some problems or difficulties, one came to mind, so I held it there for a minute, and it very quickly transformed and floated. It was like all the negative energy associated with it just dissipated like a rock falling through water. And it was so quick that right away I chose another one, and the same thing happened, that so quickly all of it just faded to nothing, like it wasn't even a situation anymore. And it was like, okay, I can do this with everything now.
I love that. Yes, you can do it with everything now. Is it freeing?
Yes, very freeing. And it's powerful. It makes you feel like a warrior,
You
like
are.
I'm marching into this, and nothing can stop me.
That's exactly right. We are no more victims, are we?
No.
We are the warriors, victorious. I love that, dear. Keep it up. Let us know. Share with us on our Facebook page. Okay? I would love to see that there. Are you ready? Are you a member of that Facebook page?
No, I have difficulties I have to go to the library to use the internet. So.
Oh, that's right. Well.
Yeah. So.
Okay. But I'm going to give you the address again, okay?
I have the address.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, so whenever you can make it, we would love to have it.
Okay.
I'm very curious about the experience of putting the Syrian dictatorship into that, what was that? The expanded being. Did anybody have any experience with that?
I did it.
Who was that?
Kaur.m4v.
Yes.
Took a sod and put him in my heart and melted him in my heart.
Mhm.
So he'll be okay.
Okay, good. Did anybody else have that experience?
I didn't have it as a melting. This is Suzanne.
Yes.
I had it like a balloon when children fill a balloon up and then let the air out. And the balloon flies, it just goes off like a whirly bird. There's a lot of, that's what I felt. I thought it was funny myself, but yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Imagine if we all did that for all of the difficult, how can he calls it, difficult species here on Earth. Imagine if we did that consistently. My God, just sit down and watch the news for 5 minutes and include all of that.
I do it every morning when I read the news. I'm blessing the news.
Oh, good, good. Be in
and
this
I watch
condition.
The world.
Yeah, be in this condition. Have an effect. Okay, who else can share?
Siri Gian?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rahmane.
Yes, dear.
It's a bit of a different feel to this sharing, but I think it weaves in beautifully. Last night I was reading Bishop Spong, who was writing about how we learn to separate God into this otherworldly entity that somehow was separate from the holiness of the body, and how Christianity particularly got into thinking that sexuality was evil and to be suppressed, and how the higher life was to be monastic and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about what he calls the Grecanization of Christianity. In other words, Hellenizing some of the earlier Hebraic principles, which were very unitive, that God worked in and through humanity. And that's what the whole Torah was a story about, was showing how by calling upon our infinite beingness, that we got through all these situations that were untenable and blocked. And he said that during the first 300 years of Christianity, it was very dangerous to be a Christian because the Roman Empire was basically against it. And then when Constantine had his conversion, all of a sudden the general mainstream civilization okayed Christianity, but that Christianity then was so used to thinking of the outer world as dangerous that they then shifted from thinking that the world out there was dangerous to thinking that worldliness was dangerous. And so that alienation from the physical and from the moment-to-moment human reality being sacred got locked in, and it got worse and worse into the Middle Ages. And I think that's why so many of us, certainly myself, was so drawn by Sikhism, because Kaur just brought it right back to the unity of Creator and creation.
Could you explain Kaur?
Yeah, well, Ek being one and Ong being the infinite manifesting mystery, and then Kaur being creation or the creating process. In other words, that the divine is in all of creation. So it gave us a refuge for that. And so when we are working with bringing blocked energies into the heart, into the soul, I'm going back to this ancestral terrible misunderstanding where, you know, instead of understanding, okay, now the outer world is no longer against us, to then letting that thought form go and allowing the trust of Creator creation to be the way of worshiping rather than this otherworldly tangent that we got onto.
Good.
And
good.
Yeah.
Worshiping at your own feet, as he says.
With every breath. Yeah. And also that you mentioned the word fateh, being victory. In Aramaic, fatah is what Jesus is reported to have said when he came to someone who was basically dead or asleep or in coma, basically disconnected from life. And he said, fatah, come forth. It's usually translated as come forth, although in a lot of Bibles they don't even translate it. They just leave the Aramaic, fatah, and it's the same root of breaking through and the victory of breaking through.
Oh, my goodness. Isn't that amazing? I love that.
Yeah. Well, because Arabic came out of Aramaic and Sikhism grew partially out of Islam, there's actually quite a lot of Gurmukhi that has its roots in Aramaic.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
When Amandeep was here, I gave him a list of the 99 names of Allah in Sufism and asked him how many of the words equated into Gurmukhi, and 18 out of the 99 were directly connected in terms of the language.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And
you know what he told me? In Sufi, names of God are things like Allahu and so on. He said that Yahoo, we have yahoo.com. Yahoo is the name of God.
Yes.
The guy who began that, he says, was a practicing Sufi.
Oh, fascinating.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Oh, and he also said the name Apple. Steve Jobs went to find his guru in India. And when Steve Jobs finally, in the parting time, asked his guru what he should do, his guru took a bite out of an apple and gave it to him. And that's the origin of Apple computers. Good name.
Neem Karola Baba.
Right. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who else can share? Oh, thank you very much, Rahmani. Thank you so much.
I think I can do again.
Who's
it's
it?
Suzanne.
Yes, Suzanne.
I think when I was experiencing soul, it's very simple for me. It was dappling, like when sunlight comes through trees.
Yes.
And it feels like you want to stand there. You want to be in that. Really, it's like a magical day or a Technicolor kind of day, and that's what it felt like. Yeah, very, very pretty, pleasing.
How precious.
Yeah, so maybe that spot is the neutral spot, and that maybe that is where you go, and if you're praying for people or those souls that you go to the neutral spot with, maybe that's what it feels like. Well, for me,
I believe it is. I believe it is. That's my experience. Yes, Baba Siri Chand says, yes, dear. He says, stay with that, know that, understand that, make it a study. That's what he says.
Thank you. I will.
Good. Thank you. Okay, who else can share?
This is Huddy Munder.
Yes, hi, dear.
Hey, the one thing the thing that really I felt in this one was when you talked about the letting the heart, I think, move out into the 10 trillion cells, and it felt like it wasn't just the heart anymore; it was every single cell in the body. And
he says, yes, you got it.
It was just, just walking around where it's everywhere. And I'm at my cabin in Gustavus in Alaska, and I was reading my old journal from 3 years ago after last week, and I came across what I wrote down in it. I was looking at a article on Darwinism by Richard Wright, and the quote was, "Scientists have discovered that love is truth." And I was just blown away by.
Go ahead.
That's it. it was it talked about our genes transcending just our selfishness of wanting to win or be the best or procreate the best, and we were able to have empathy beyond our narrow empathy for family and friends, but evolution has led us to something that's outside of ourselves, outside of our genetic self-interest, was part of the article. But the scientists have discovered that love is truth was just astounding, because that connects the heart and the truth of Satnam. So that's it.
That's great. That's great. Feedback from the scientific community. Love is truth. That is true. That is true. That's wonderful, dear. Thank you so much. Okay, is there anyone else? We have time for one more, if you would like to share. Anybody? Okay, so I'm going to say what a precious privilege it is to be with everybody, including Baba Siri Chand. Here we are. It's like one circle. He showed me we're like one circle underneath the old apple tree, he calls it, just enjoying one another. He says, enjoying the fruits of our labors and becoming consciously becoming one. He says, that's what this return trip is all about. He says, oh, don't you love it? Okay, so God bless everybody. That is, everybody worship at the feet of everybody. Imagine. Okay, so now is Kehar here? Okay, she's probably driving. She's moving from Virginia to New Mexico, so she might be on the road today. So please sit straight, palms together. Inhale. May the long time sun shine upon you. All love around you. And the pure light within you. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Inhale. And bow to your own infinity. Truth is love. Love is truth. Satnam. Bless you. Talk to you soon.
Bless you and thank you.
Okay, Satnam. Bye.
Bye-bye.